Yesterday, August 26th, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Venezuela, Jorge Arreaza, put on Twitter, through his account, "Humanity must declare itself in maximum alert." In this discourse, Mike Pompeo shows how elitist the U.S. authorities are when saying that the exception principle could be applied. This myth was also said by the Chancellor is the major threat to the multilateralism and security of the world. Taken to the foreign affairs, it's running over the self-determination of the peoples, and they're trying to impose their model by force. There was a supremacist speech of Mike Pompeo when he was speaking about America, and it was called supremacist because they were talking about the perpetuity of how America is only North America, and the rest. This may explain what we're going to explain in the following hour: Greenland and the dispute between major powers. Let's see more information. We have guests, and as always, we have your input. An interest that some thought was a joke and others thought it was ridiculous. Some understood it as a colonialist twist, and others really thought it was serious. This began on August 16, when the Wall Street Journal published that it was the will of the President, Donald Trump, to buy Greenland. This was a purchase that was going to be made. It was not well understood how they were going to assess the price. 4 days later, on August 2018, Greenland said categorically through their prime minister in the following way: Greenland is not for sale in any way. They probably thought it was a joke. The Americans can exchange resources with Greenland like any other country. You can commercialize with us, but our country is not for sale. After what the Wall Street Journal said on August 19, Trump had said that he thought that it would be strategic, interesting, but it wasn't his priority either. The truth is that the answer of the Prime Minister hurt his feelings, apparently. So he delayed his official visit to Denmark that was foreseen for the first days of September. Denmark, well, Greenland is autonomous that belongs to Denmark. And Denmark, this is what Trump said. It was just a thought. I thought that it was absurd. They said it was absurd, and we thought it was very nasty. It was sarcastic. And we will have dinner some other time. I think you have to respect the United States. Denmark, as they said through their prime minister, answered that Greenland is not for sale. But interested in that Donald Trump not be too upset. There has been a debate over selling Greenland. Of course, Greenland is not for sale. This does not change our good relationships that we maintain with the U.S. We will continue with our permanent dialogue on how to follow up on our exchange. With surprise, I received the news that the President had canceled his visit for the 2 and 3 of September. We were awaiting that visit, and we had things that prepared. It was an opportunity, I think, to celebrate the close relationship of Denmark with the U.S. Let's go to digital websites like I always do in this first part. This is from Contrainfo. that has a lot of information, but it's an opinion article. This is an op-ed from Alfredo Jalife Rame. It says, Trump seeks to buy Greenland to contain Russia and China in the Arctic. And this speaks of the geopolitical aspects and explains that there is a dispute between powers. It says, among other things, that the legislator of the Republican Party, Mike Goldlager, said that this is a geopolitical intelligent move, since the U.S. has an interest in Greenland. And further down, Jalife says that The Economist says that the strategic interest is to control a choke point. And this is what it says: the corridor between Greenland, Iceland, Great Britain, known as the Hulk Strait, is an important passage through the submarine. Russian submarine has increased 10 times. And this continues as a conclusion in the midst of alarming events, in the midst of the tariff war with China. This move of Trump can provoke Russia, which would take to the militarization of the Arctic zone. The Danish politicians have said that Greenland is not for sale, but however, they don't know that Greenland is going to take over or liberate Greenland like they've done in the past. This is the opinion of Alfredo Jalife. Let's go to another website, Telefe Noticias Argentina, August 16, 2019. Trump says natural resources in geopolitical. Trump wants U.S. to buy Greenland. And on the bottom it says, aides to Trump says that buying Greenland could be beneficial for the U.S., while others consider that the idea is a strong passing fascination. Let's not forget that it was the Wall Street Journal, this desire of Donald Trump, and among other things, and it continues. Others beyond the government say that President Trump's desire could be a way to leave a legacy, while his aides discuss the potential for research and a major military capacity for the U.S. And in Telefe Noticias, we find the picture that alerts on the climate changes in Greenland. Let's see this image of a snow sled that can't continue due to the soft snow in Greenland. They had gone to retrieve some material that they had left. However, they were unable to go forward with it because all of the snow had been melting down. Let's show you, let's find the image. I think we have it over here. There it is. Mr. Director, let's focus on this picture. This is the picture I was talking about. And the note is from June 18 of 2019. There we have the sled and some water on top of it, and this used to be solid ice. Let's go to a recommendation. The purchase of Greenland, is this commercial interest or just political interest? This analyst says that the great news media that are opposing to Trump criticized Trump for the way he behaves himself. But they're trying to analyze the underlying interests. However, although the Cold War has finished some years ago, there are commercial disputes between great powers. These are ironies of the world. The climate change that Trump rejects has transformed the Arctic in a new battlefield. There are new navigation routes that close the distance between the continents, and it's being compared with the Panama Canal or Suez. Well, interesting to analyze this along with our guests. Let's go to our correspondents. Let's go to Washington. Here we have Jorge Gestoso. Jorge, have there been any official speeches of Trump and then the word of himself confirming this interest of buying Greenland? Well, what you said in different quotes, and you said fundamentally that some op-eds of some experts or analysts, let's listen both bells. All stories have two sides, so it would be interesting that in 2018, according to The Guardian, China was also doing the same thing, trying to get close to Denmark and expressing their interest and having some relationship with Greenland. You expressed it very well at the beginning of your program, establishing that we're not speaking of geopolitical strategies. The geopolitical strategies have at least two sides, China and the U.S. What I listened from your program was the interest of Donald Trump in purchasing Greenland. What we should also say is that there is also interest of other great powers like China and Russia that since this climate change and the melting down of the Arctic have allowed new routes to be open. Just like you mentioned it. I think you mentioned everything that was relevant in this topic. So these routes would close the distance between both continents. And they would not have to go through the Suez Canal or the Panama Canal. So this is a geostrategic strategy of all of the great actors, not only Trump, that definitely has some major role in the news media, but also with what the Arctic region represents. So here we're speaking of 30% of the gas and petroleum of the world. The U.S. has a military base there. But here we have a bet. Let's see who can have control over Greenland to be able to beat their rivals over this ambition. And in this context, China and Russia is at least actively pursuing the same interest. And I think this is what the important thing that we can say here from Washington. We're back to you. However, I'm sorry, I can't listen to your audio.
Por eso el título de nuestra jugada, Groenlandia y ambiciones en el Ártico, disputa entre potencias. Y Jorge nos dejaba allí una pregunta.
And Jorge now sets an interesting question that we'll analyze in our second part. Which of these powers is closer to take over this territory in case that this may be the interest? There are several interesting information that we'll go on to. Meanwhile, let's analyze what may be the interest of Donald Trump and why is he interested in buying Greenland. We're going to analyze from the standpoint of our guests. We'll be right back. Well, Greenland and the ambitions in the Arctic, it's a dispute between powers. So this is our critical moves for today. The military interests of Greenland go way back. Let's analyze what they want, what they desire. This is what one of these actors have shown. For the United States, without a doubt, Greenland is a strategic place. On the north of the island, they have since 1957 a military base, the only installation of this type at the north of the polar circle. Through this region, for this military base, there's no tax that's being paid. Because United States has ample military rights over this. They have military surveillance and early alert of missiles. There we have a group of officials that are Air Force officials that have a huge radar there. Last year, the Defense Department said that they wanted to greatly have more strategic investments in Greenland. In 1867, under the presidency of Andrew Johnson, they said that Greenland had a strategic location. And then Harry Truman tried to buy Greenland to buy the sovereignty. However, the Danish authorities of the time opposed. A year later, said that the military forces considered Greenland as a military need. The White House was always worried that the island may be taken over by another power. Barack Obama also saw the Arctic with military purposes and saw the advance of Russia with their ties with the island. That's why they decided to put icebreakers there. Then Paul Sakuf said that these icebreakers could be even armed with cruise missiles. Analysts coincide that this area is important for geographical countries that are near. And while the ice is melting, there's new routes there. And about Greenland, speaking of one of the we're going to say that when they're not invaded or taken over by force, then they buy them. There is a tradition of the U.S. buying the territories they're interested in. The U.S. started this practice with the Louisiana Purchase, buying from Napoleon for $15 million. Then they bought Florida from Spain after 1819 of a treaty between Spain and the U.S., which took away all of the territories beyond the Mississippi in exchange to administering Texas. Well, the U.S. did not. Then Alaska was bought from Russia in 1917. They bought the West Indies from Denmark, and they called it as Virgin Islands. Then there was the Mexican secession, where they took away over half of its territory in the 19th century. Then the U.S. has put its hands on Philippines, Panama, Cuba, among the most important. In some cases, the self-determination prevailed, and while in others, there is still a independence movement going on. Well, very interesting. Let's analyze along with Dr. Jaime. He's master in international policies, and he's the founder of a university program on this topic. He's coming up from Venezuela. Then we have Dr. Carmona. He's a university professor, international analyst. Thank you very much. Let's start with Miguel to respect the order in which I introduced you. Well, several aspects to talk about. First, I want to see what your opinion is on this desire of Donald Trump. Then we have this military interest in this area, and this might be some treason to buy territory, because when they don't buy it, they take over them by force. Well, this also is always moved by force. That is their intention. And that's what they want over the biggest island in the world. And this is the result of what North America ever since it began, with the 13 colonies, with the purchase of the territories from Canada, and the debt it has with Mexico now. Well, this extravagancy has taken them now to control some lands that we can only imagine how far this intention can go. Well, now I want to ask Ernesto his vision. Let's see what is behind, what is underlying this intention. We see an article that was written in Izquierda Diario that said the great news media that oppose Donald Trump have criticized him for his behavior. However, they do share the underlying interests of this proposal. What do you think, Ernesto? Well, exactly. Every time that there's been a purchase on behalf of the U.S. or an appropriation, the liberal news media protest, like in the case of Mexico. There was even an opposition within the Congress. But at the end of the day, the economic interests are marked stronger, and it depends on the situation. In this case, there will be some opposition of anti-expansionist. However, the economic interests are very strong in the Arctic. And it has become an object of all of the countries of the world, especially because of the climate change in the region. The ices are thinner, it's getting warmer to the double of the rate that it used to, and this makes it easy to extract mineral elements, and there can also be more touristic development in the region. So the U.S. has this vision, and so do the others that would like to develop the Arctic. And of course, this is the military aspect is very worrisome. Let's not forget Russia. Russia has the major part of territory in that part, followed by Canada, and well, the U.S. possesses Alaska. So if they had Greenland, they would expand their lands there. Because what they want to expand their influence there. And of course, they would have defense and defensive strategies that would part from there. At the end of the day, we'll see if we will see an opposition, but it will be silenced, faced with the hunger for expansion. And this has, as I told you before, this has not happened. This has happened before. Thank you, Ernesto. I would like to see the map. This is the 12th region, largest region in our planet. Greenland, the huge island that the U.S. wants to purchase, is located in the north of the U.S. between the Arctic Ocean and the glacier Arctic. In English, it's called Greenland. It's the largest island in the continent with 2,166,000 square kilometers. And at the same time, it has 57 inhabitants. It's in a place that is not frozen, and this small part is basically of Greenland, but made basically of people of Denmark. It is constituted as an autonomous region, but it belongs to Denmark. In 2008, the Danish government has control over the foreign affairs, security, and fiscal polity. Additionally, it has the compromise to give 60% of its budget to the island. The rest of the decisions are in the hand of the local authorities. Geopolitics. It is rich in minerals and rare soils. Some have been already exploited from 2007. It also has petroleum and gas. It also has a great marine bank in its coast, and its economy depends on fishing and exportation of shrimp and fish. At the same time, 85% of its territory is covered by ice that is 3 kilometers thick, that contains 10% of the sweet water, of the fresh water of the world. And that's why it's the second largest ice reserve after the Antarctic. The weight of this huge body of land, we see that the water goes from the inside to the outside. And this island has suffered the climate change. In July, many tons of ice sunk in the sea. It is clear that it's a huge body of ice that is melting, and this might flood the coastal regions of the world, but it would also open new routes between Europe and America. Denmark has several military bases, as well as the U.S. It's a strategic base, and at the time of some tensions there, they have a military base ever since the Cold War, and this is ideal for surveillance and to detect satellites, especially to spy on Russia. China also is a competitor because the new routes that are opened would be ideal for the Silk Route. Additionally, they also want to buy some contracts to open 3 international airports that the local government are interested in building. Well, they have a lot to offer. To see the location, it's closer to North America from Canada, the United States, than from Denmark. This is the kingdom it belongs to. This is the largest island in the world, as we spoke about it. If we consider that Australia is larger, but is a continent in itself. Let's continue speaking about this. The location and resources might be of interest of everybody, and this speaks of some other interest. Let's talk to you, Miguel.
Sobre este pulseo, ¿sí tenemos comunicación?
Sí, la escucho, sí.
Sí, Miguel. Decía que no es solamente Estados Unidos, seguramente a todos los actores
As I said,
en ese mapa, Rusia, China,
some of the actors we spoke about, we also have to add some others. They have interest in all of the resources there. But let's not forget that they have a privileged location.
Sí, la posición de esta isla, como bien lo señala, que
in fact, the position of this island, which is the largest one in the world, opens the desire of North America. This is a very delicate situation for the world due to the environmental situation. We have seen the terrible consequences that are going on, especially in this area. And now Trump wants to make of this island a new route, a commercial route, where the environment is the last of their considerations. Of course, this would be to confront major part of Europe, and they would want to control their markets. And this will keep on being an imposition on the whole planet. If you ask the planet, what do you want? And what does humanity require? They need peace, prosperity, development. With the Trump administration, all of these world ambitions is just not happening. Greenland is just a new episode. And they're trying to do is to confront some other countries that want to invest in this strategic place. I would like to go to Ernesto from Mexico to know your opinion.
Sí, mira, aquí mencionas tres.
Well, here you mentioned three principal actors, which are the U.S., China, and Russia. And here the thing is that Russia and the U.S. are border countries of the Arctic, and China is a non-Arctic actor. So, due to their position, it does not have direct interference in the Arctic. There is an organism, it's the Council of the Arctic, where the ministers of these countries act. We've got Norway, Iceland, Denmark, Russia, and the U.S. And there are all of the European Union, Russia, and the U.S.'s interests are being represented. However, China doesn't have a chair there. So China depends on their with their allies to develop their interests and try to of course, their major door in would be through Russia. However, there is a study, there's a research that is called Evaluation of the Maritime of 2019 of the Maritime Navigation that recommends three things. One, security, that is the most
El otro
fundamental
es
topic.
protección al ambiente y a la
The
población
second one
nativa.
is the protection of
Y
environment
finalmente
and
la
people.
construcción de
And
infraestructura,
third,
que esto tiene
construction
mucho
of
que ver con lo que
infrastructure.
señalabas
And this has a
de
lot
los
to
intereses
do
chinos.
with
La
Chinese
construcción de
interests.
infraestructura marítima será a través de puertos, estaciones de servicio
The
y
maritime
todo
routes
eso.
would be
Hasta la
through
fecha, las
construction of
rutas que
ports.
se han
Up
tratado de
until
explorar en
now,
la zona
the routes that have
han
been tried to
fracasado porque termina
exploited through
congelándose
to this
a
part
cierto
have
momento antes
failed
que
because
termine
they
algún
have
trayecto y
frozen
los barcos quedan varados en la zona
before
del
the
Ártico.
ships finish
Pero
their
como hemos visto
voyage.
el avance del cambio
However, as we've
climático,
seen
esto va a
how
tender a cambiar.
the
Y
climate
entonces
change
sí
is
podemos desarrollar ahí rutas
advancing,
marítimas
this
que
will
acortarían
change.
los tiempos si hacemos el viaje a través del norte
If we
y por
go
rutas
through
marítimas
the
que incluyan
north
Groenlandia, precisamente por su
and
posición
maritime rights
privilegiada
that go
entre
through
Europa y Estados
Greenland,
Unidos. Y también podrían acortar las distancias entre el
and they
este
could
de
also
Asia y
shorten
América del
distance
Norte.
if they
Es
go
decir, que
through
la
North
importancia
America.
económica de
So
la
the
región es muy evidente.
the
Y
importance of
además
this
todo lo que
region
ya
is
mencionaron
fundamental.
de recursos naturales, de disposición de recursos naturales.
Additional to
Entonces,
everything that
todo
has to do
esto
with natural
pues va
resources.
a
So
agregar
all of
un
this
elemento más a todo el componente geopolítico del mundo,
just adds all of
sobre todo porque
another
China tendrá que
element,
ver a través de
because
quién puede entrar.
China will have to
Y le
see
insisto,
how they can have
podría
an
ser a
open
través de
door
Rusia,
to that
pero
region. It could be
China
through
podría
Russia.
tener inversiones muy fuertes a través de su desarrollo portuario, que es muy
But what
grande,
they're trying to
como
do
bien
is
lo
to
mencionas
develop
con
their
esta
ports.
estrategia de la ruta de la seda.
And therefore, they want
A
to
través de
make it a
Islandia, por
part
ejemplo, o a
of
través
the
de
Silk
Suecia y
Route.
Finlandia, que
Maybe they
tienen
could
una
do it through
porción
Iceland
menor
or
de
Finland.
influencia geográfica en la zona, pero puede ser una buena pieza para empezar, una buena cabeza de playa para empezar a influir en eso. Entonces, estas potencias van a tener un elemento más
So
de
these
disputa como otras regiones en las que se disputan los intereses.
this region has a lot of dispute where these countries
Ernesto,
have
Miguel,
interest in.
muchísimas gracias
Thank you. I
por
want to thank both my
atendernos y
guests
por explicar
for
su
explaining
análisis
your
sobre esta
analysis
jugada
about
crítica.
this
Hasta pronto.
critical
Bueno,
moves.
justamente lo que Ernesto
Well,
desarrollaba nos
just
da
what
pie
Ernesto
para
said, this
la
opens the door
próxima parte de nuestro
to our
análisis.
next
Queremos
part
ir
of
un
our
poco más
analysis.
allá.
We want to
Queremos
go a
ir
little bit
al
beyond.
Ártico, mirarlo
We
en su
want to go to
conjunto,
the
que no
Arctic
solo
and see it
Groenlandia,
as a
nos
whole,
recordaba,
not only Greenland.
Ernesto justamente nos decía, son 5
Ernesto was
estados
telling us that there are
fronterizos
5
del Ártico,
border
y
countries of
bueno
the
también
Arctic.
saber si quiere Estados Unidos,
And
a juzgar por las últimas acciones,
what
contener a
we've seen
Rusia
from
y
the
China.
US,
Y nos
does this
hacía-
have to
se hacía una
do
pregunta,
with the war
Ernesto,
between
que abona en
Russia
el
and
análisis.
China?
¿Cómo podría
With the
entrar
US?
China allí?
How
Bueno,
could
hay algunos
China
datos
have
informativos
some
concretos.
some
Hacia allá
say in
vamos,
this?
en la última
We'll go
pausa,
to this
volvemos con
after
más.
our pause.
Sigamos analizando
Let's continue
Groenlandia, las divisiones en el
analyzing
Ártico, disputa
Greenland,
entre potencias,
the dispute
el
between
cambio
powers,
climático,
the
importante
climate
situación en la
change,
política mundial. Así,
and
el Polo Norte,
the
la región
influence
del
in the
Océano
political
Ártico,
stance.
es un escenario de disputa
So this is
geopolítica. Y es que las
a place
previsiones todas
for political
hablan de un
dispute
progresivo
because
derretimiento de los cielos en los
everything
últimos años
foresees
del
that
planeta.
this place will
Y
be
esto
melting.
ha
And
disparado
this,
intereses
of
por
course,
recursos
triggers the
minerales y
interest
energéticos
for the
tan
mineral
alejados
resources
justo
that are
bajo
right
nosotros.
under the
Un
sea.
análisis que publica
An analysis
Mirko
published by
Judo,
Mirko
experto del
Judo,
Observatorio de
an
Estudios
expert from
Macroeconómicos en Nueva York,
New
sobre la
York,
propuesta del
on
presidente
the
Donald Trump
proposal
de
of
comprar
Donald
Groenlandia,
Trump to buy
plantea que la
Greenland,
anexión de esa
says
gran mole helada frenaría apetitos de China y Rusia
that
en el Ártico.
should Trump be successful, China and Russia would stop having interest. In this region of the planet, along with great rare earths that is useful for telecommunication and making cars, there's a 30% of the reserves of not exploited resources. Russia and China also want some control. However, with some differences, these three actors are interested the location and the resources. China, that has begun calling themselves almost Arctic power, would have some possibilities to have a station of their Silk Route that would add itself to the other stations that they're already making. It has bought several icebreakers, some that are used with nuclear powers to make a way to their boats and support their commercial trade. They could connect the Atlantic and the Pacific. In the case of Russia, in 2017, President Putin expressed the cooperation interest with China to have a commercial route that would be much more beneficial between Asia and Europe. He has also worked to take over this region. Before, there had been a submarine of Russia that had placed its flag. Let's see some more analysis on this. Hi, Luis. Thank you for being with us. Thanks for the invitation. For all of the actors that are here having some action and participation, the Arctic is important, and everybody seems really active moving their chips. But what difference the U.S. is that they already have a military base operating there, and it has capacity for espionage, launching missiles. Well, going over all of this, the United States has upcoming elections, which generates all of the declarations of Donald Trump to be modified in this light. So basically what he says is not necessarily true, but it's focused on his re-election. So this is something we just have to bear in mind. Now this dispute between the U.S. and Denmark, which was not well managed on behalf of the U.S., but Denmark has been explicit in saying that Greenland is not for sale. If we analyze that other parts have also supported the European Union in this case, has also supported Denmark's position because they're not interested in the U.S. taking over this piece of land. When we speak of Russia and China, what's going on? Russia is a country that has the major amount of territory in the Arctic Circle. This is important. We must not forget this, because we can draw the similitudes between the space war. The U.S. was the first one to get there, and then it was the Russians. But what happens at this moment? Historically, Russia has decades of working with this Arctic space. They have infrastructure, they have scientific research, they have military implements for this area, and a great detail. They have icebreakers, a float of over 40 icebreakers. They have had good and bad experiences in the projects they have participated. And in this case, they have the advantage, which is important for the U.S. to have that present. And of course, that's why they want to be there and have some presence there. And we want to push out several of the actors that are there. They need to have resources and presence there. Why do you say that it was not well managed? Well, it has not been diplomatic, and this is a characteristic of the U.S. They don't respect international treaties. They favor invasions, coercive economic measures, economic embargoes and sanctions to different countries and with different policies. That does not let us see a mediator president, not like the majority of presidents in the last decade. So their characteristic is this, of imposition, from his position of a millionaire. This is not well seen from his historical allies or his new friends. This basically answers to the capitalist hunger that the U.S. has.
Efectivamente están los intereses de Rusia y China también, ¿no?
Correcto. Y lo decía Jorge Gestoso.
Jorge Gestoso already said so. We should not forget the presence of China and Russia in the area. Other analysts have already spoken of the point of view of what the U.S. wants. China not only tried to buy Greenland, but also at the moment, they have different participation and contracts in the 3 airports that are going to be built there. And they're participating in the widest range of interest with Greenland and Denmark. And they have their proposal there of buying the whole island or part of it. This means that China has seen to the future, and they consider this as a geopolitical and economic pivotal point. Let's not forget that the Silk Route could have a way through there. So Greenland is a very important station for the future Silk Route. Maybe we could say that the greatest loser would be the environment, because global warming has increased to 50 and 100 years. So now that we're losing our environment, these new routes can be opened. Greenland, at least, has the 23 main minerals from oil, gas, and then all of these powers are interested in that commerce. And those rare earths that China and the U.S. wants them. These rare earths that are used for technology are the ones we use on the day-to-day, and for nuclear technology too. So this is a 3-tiered interest. And the great loser is the environment. Do you foresee something that we had read in an article from Alfredo Jarife? Do you foresee that maybe this could launch some anger from Russia and turn on the militarization? Well, I don't think that it would bring it up, because Russia has already seen it as a military strategic point from several years ago. And they began with military presence and scientific presence in the region. And they do have military resources in the area, and military weapons designed to be able to work in that harsh environment. Russia already has some presence there. And
minerales, tierras raras y recursos.
And they do have the research on what are the resources they have. Russia already knows it for a decade, and that is already in the strategic planning. Just the cherry on top of the ice cream, I think that the U.S. has just realized this. And of course, they're trying to catch up. But I think it's hard. Unless there's an extraordinary event, an invasion by force, or that they're able to pressure some changes of governments in the countries like Denmark. So there could be so all of the contracts that are pending for China and Russia, they be rejected and they be given to the U.S. Well, the European Union has been slowed down because they've given that priority to Iceland, Norway, and Denmark, because they would have the first call on this. Well, I was able to see on the opinions of people of Greenland, where they can see that they're interested in the technological and scientific advancement. And one of the countries that have made more proposals has been China. There's a single company of the U.S., which is the largest one, that have some contracts there and that hire people from the zone. But they only have one. China has more presence there. And most of the people there are favorable of China being the one that invests. Let's not forget that the public services in Greenland are the highest ones, and these are paid by the people. And if there's more competition in terms of public services and infrastructure, will be cheaper. Okay. Thank you very much, Luis, for talking for us. Let's go to conclusions.